Hello, scholars. Welcome back from winter break. I hope you had a restful and recharging 2 weeks off. I guess it was 16 days. That's a big break. I really enjoyed it with my family. I hope you were able to spend some time with your family. And if you celebrated any holidays, I hope they were joy filled and you ate a lot of food that was good and maybe not so good for you. But Happy New Year. We're moving into Stoicism number 6. This is a big one. And when you're first looking at it, you might think negative visualization. That might seem kind of like a bummer, right? Like we're thinking of negative thoughts. But have you ever had, you're kicking around this idea and somebody says, "What's the worst that could happen?" And their idea is, hey, let's go through what's the worst that could happen, and then realize that it's not as bad as we think it is, right? So that's kind of the basis of this one, negative visualization. So what's it mean? So here it is in Latin. I'll give my best try. Premeditatio malorum. It's basically, what does that translate to? Thinking of the worst that could happen in a situation, pre-thinking, right? And this whole idea is that if we do that, we can actually reduce the anxiety and fear. And if you look at the world today, there's a lot of anxiety and fear, and people keep getting in these feedback loops that they can't get out of, right? And they're afraid to do stuff, and then they have this grief or this anger, as Marcus Aurelius says in this quote, of not doing something, right? And it becomes harder and harder to do things because we're in this loop. And so the Stoics would say, hey, if you find yourself and you're worried or you're fearful to do something, why don't you sit down and think about what's the worst that could happen, and then, or what are some of the bad things that could happen, and how would you respond to those? All right. So in this world, we have fewer and fewer kids getting together outside of school. They'll do it online, but getting together in person, it doesn't happen as much anymore. And I think part of it is because we're afraid. Part of it, we might be kind of, used to online stuff, and it's easy to play with somebody, through video games or whatever, or through our phone. But getting together in person, some of it is fear based, right? Like, what if I met a new friend? I want to go to the movies. I want to hang out at the mall, do what kids do, right? But I'm afraid they'll say no, right? So the sixth principle, negative visualization, is okay. So what's that look like? I go up to them at lunch and I say, "Hey, friend, what are you doing this weekend?" "I don't know, nothing." "Do you want to go to the mall?" And what if they turn to me and say, "Not with you"? And you'd say, you could start crying, right? That would be a natural response. Or you could say, "Okay, really? Well, there's a group of us going. I'm trying to get a group together. You could come with all of us." Or you could say, "Maybe next time." Or you could just realize, hey, if somebody says that back to you, they're probably not going to be too much fun to hang out with anyways, right? What's most likely going to happen is not the worst thing, right? But if you have a plan for all the negative things that could happen, it reduces our anxiety and we get more courage, right? We're more able to do things that we might not normally do, right? And so what would the Stoics do? I've got a couple of situations for you. I've got the first one here is what I want you and your classes right now to kind of kick around. You're in this situation. If you were a Stoic using negative visualization, what would you do? Okay. And then pause it after I say this, and then go and do the big question. We'll go, that's the last slide. Okay. So the situation is, tomorrow we have an interim. The interims are coming up. You've probably felt this before. Anybody that's taken a big test has felt this, right? You start to become overwhelmed. You're studying, but you realize, I don't know a lot, right? So you become overwhelmed and you almost feel sick and you're worried and you don't know and you're crabby and all of these things, right? What would a Stoic do in that situation? Okay, pause here. Did you pause? Pause. Okay. Did you have good conversation? Great. So our last one is the big question. Now, this is kind of a side effect to the negative visualization that a lot of people avoid, or not avoid, but they don't realize, right? The Stoics believe that this principle actually filled them with gratitude. So, why do you think they believe this? So, we're thinking of all these negative things that could happen to us. How does that actually increase our gratitude? Now, I know you're smart enough to do this. And I know it's kind of awkward to talk about this stuff in front of a group of people, especially when I'm just a floating head on TV, right? Take the time and do it. It is a very powerful technique to get over fear and anxiety, and it will make you a more successful person and a probably happier. All right. Take care. See you next time.